Right, hello guys and welcome back. Shadow & Order is the next major update planned for Destiny 2, and as of the making of this video, we still don't know a whole lot about what it's bringing to the game outside of some previously mentioned changes in various articles. So in an effort to give you all something to be excited about, what with the recent string of 3 absolutely nothing burger twids, today we're going to be covering everything we currently know about the Shadow & Order major update, and I'm willing to bet there's at least a couple things listed here that you probably forgot about. So without further ado, let's begin, and if you enjoy today's news coverage, then your like and subscription would be very much appreciated. The first and most pressing matter we ought to discuss is the actual release date of the update, because if you go by the countdown in-game, this points to a release date of March 3rd, 2026, and actually this was the date listed on the original Year of Prophecy roadmap. However, there have been recent rumors online that Shadow & Order is being delayed to accommodate the release of Bungie's upcoming extraction shooter game Marathon, because Marathon is releasing on March 5th, and well, this is likely going to end up being true. If I were Bungie, I wouldn't want a Destiny update clashing with the release of a game they've been working on for the past 5 or 6 years, and I am almost certain Bungie will want to give Marathon as much time to breathe as possible. Therefore, my prediction for Shadow & Order's new release date would be 3 or 4 weeks later on either the 24th or 31st of March. An annoying but understandable reality. Okay, now on to some information regarding the update itself, starting with the plot. Ashen Iron isn't exactly an outstanding example of storyline continuation, at least not when compared to seasons or episodes. However, it too was a major update just like Shadow & Order, and we can expect to see at least some continuation of the Renegades or wider Fate Saga story within it. And from a now removed in-game screenshot from the timeline, we can see what was presumably the brief description for this update, stating, "Race the Dredgen and their outlaw mercenaries to a weapon of shadowy legend, storm a Hive weapons foundry and prevent the Dredgen from expanding their corrupted arsenal." And I'm no lore expert, so I'm not entirely certain what this may entail. Perhaps leave your thoughts and speculation in the comments, but what I can gather is that Shadow & Order will most likely involve the Hive and potentially even invite appearances from Savathun or Xivu Arath. And I'm pretty sure Savathun hates us now, so it would be interesting to have her in the story once again. Looking back at Ashen Iron, I would expect a single basic story mission at the beginning of the update, and then the rest is played out through dialogue in the activities we find ourselves in. And speaking of, let's discuss the activities that Shadow & Order will bring. If Ashen Iron is anything to go by, Shadow & Order will bring at least one new activity to the game along the lines of Reclaim from Ashen Iron. Fingers crossed the activity is at least slightly better than Reclaim, since we all remember how unflattering it was, but with recent achievements like the Lawless Frontier and Shadow & Order seemingly following in a similar direction, I do have slightly more faith this time that the main seasonal activity will actually be okay. Ashen Iron also brought us the Heliostat exotic mission, which I personally quite enjoyed. However, there has been no confirmation that Shadow & Order will also bring an exotic mission, though I would expect it to add at least 2 new exotic weapons to the game, so it would make sense for it to follow a similar structure. The last activity coming with the update deserves its own section of the video because it's supposedly a raid experience similar to the Pantheon from Into the Light. For those of you who never played the original, the Pantheon was a raid event that brought a selection of 4 boss rush activities that featured the bosses from several of the franchise's raids, remixed with new mechanics, enemies, increased difficulty, and a killer title and cosmetic chase to boot. Guardians who conquered every challenge within the Pantheon were awarded the Godslayer title, as well as a selection of 4 of the most clean-looking raid emblems we have ever had. It was seriously a great time and was a really nice way for people to get into raiding and be generously rewarded for it. And supposedly, the event is returning during Shadow & Order, or at least an event that is similar in spirit. Here is a direct quote from a Bungie article discussing the future of raids and dungeons from September 25th, 2024. Destiny 2 Into the Light introduced a raid boss rush event called the Pantheon that put Fireteam's capabilities to the test. This event showed us that our community is hungry for new experiences that break out of the mold of our traditional raids and dungeons. So, in the 4th major update of the year, we're planning for another event that introduces novelty and allows our team to experiment with legacy raid and dungeon offerings to create surprising aspirational challenges. We are very early in the design stages of this event, so more details as we develop them. As of the writing of this script, officially this is still the most recent word on the possibility of seeing a Pantheon 2. I say officially because recent leaks have pointed to some major details about what the event will entail. Take these points with a heavy grain of salt, of course, but here goes. Leaks account Deekstony on X published a text document that shares some details on what the Shadow & Order Pantheon will involve, and according to this document, 3 encounters from Destiny 2's vaulted raids will return. Insurrection Prime from Scourge of the Past, Galran from Crown of Sorrow, and Valkayor from Spire of Stars, with the document also stating that the boss encounters will merge mechanics mechanics from previous encounters. However, I don't really understand that part since all encounters are a culmination of the entire respective raid's mechanics already, so perhaps it's just some new additions. Of course, this is a very bold statement that could be completely untrue, since outside of a few examples like the Whisper and 0 Hour missions, Bungie rarely reprise any of the DCV content purely because of how much of an undertaking it is. And as much as I'd love for these leaks to be true and once again get to experience the awesome old raids, we do need to temper our expectations. I would also hope that we get to see the return of some of the OG Pantheon encounters like Rulk and Riven, as well as some new ones like Pantheon Witness. Imagine how cool that would be. Speaking of raids more generally though, and dungeons too, the This Week in Destiny article from the 13th of November 2025, the one where Vanguard alerts were unveiled, Bungie stated, and I quote, "We are working on further improvements for Vanguard alerts that we will share as soon as possible. In the meantime, we can share that we are looking into adding legacy content including raids and dungeons to the weekly rotation, and finding a permanent location for Vanguard alerts in the portal, as well as exploring expanding the activity and reward offerings in a future update." And if I was an optimist, I'd say that we could potentially start to see legacy raids and dungeons enter into the Vanguard alerts tab during Shadow and Order, which would be such a great step for getting people back into rad content that could look something like this. What you're seeing here is a concept image we created for an older video from a couple months back, showcasing a new second page of the Vanguard alerts that is dedicated solely to the weekly rad offerings. Fingers crossed on this one, but I also wouldn't be surprised if we have to wait until Shattered Cycle, the next major expansion, for this change to land instead. Next are some game and quality of life updates that were previously announced and are known to be coming. The first being that with Shadow and Order, we are going to be getting 10 more artifact perks to play with, just like in Ash and Iron. My money is on some more Void and potentially Strand related perks, and I'm sure there will also be some returning favorites thrown in there. And after that, we actually have a pretty major quality of life change coming, and that is Weapon Tier Enhancement. Weapon Tier Enhancement is a new system Bungie unveiled during the Renegades reveal stream on September 9th, and what it's going to allow you to do is take any weapon that's lower than Tier 5, say Tier 3, and then spend resources to enhance it all the way up to Tier 5. The reasoning given here was that imagine you got yourself a God Roll weapon, but it was only Tier 2 or 3, and you felt bad because it wasn't the highest Tier 5, so it gets less bonuses because most of the perks and mod slot are not enhanced. Well, this system will fix that. I doubt that enhancing a Tier 1 weapon all the way to Tier 5 will also add on the multiple traits per column, but instead simply serve as a way to make sure every single perk on the gun as well as the mod slot become enhanced. And during the live stream, Bungie stated that a new currency would be required for this process. However, we do not know if they have stuck to this original vision. In fact, a couple announcements from this livestream have been tweaked slightly. Bungie said that they were looking into making Conquest drop weekly repeatable loot. However, this was way before we knew about Vanguard alerts, and I'm willing to bet this is what the GM alerts, aka new GM Nightfalls, became instead, because Conquests are still just a one-time thing. Yes, you can repeat them now, but they don't provide anything beyond that. I know this isn't a feedback video, but I do have to reiterate my idea on having each Conquest drop its own unique piece of loot. Another quality of life change is going to be the addition of the ability to focus or buy older seasonal gear that's no longer in rotation, like Mint Retrograde, Smoke Jumper armor, and so on. And this is going to be done via ciphers, because if you didn't know, if you kept any Nightfall ciphers from pre-Age of Fate, with the Renegades patch, they have now been sneakily renamed to Pinnacle Ops ciphers. And there are also a bunch of other new cipher items in the game files, like Crucible, Fireteam, Osirian, and Iron ciphers, which presumably will allow you to go to their respective vendor and buy the older gear. Fingers crossed that they will be easy enough to earn and prices are cheap. For more information about this change, please visit this Reddit post linked in the description box below. Shadow and Order is also due to come with a variety of much needed sandbox changes to some of the light subclasses, particularly Void Titan, Void Hunter, and Arc Hunter. For Void Hunters, in the Renegades ability tuning preview blog post from November 24th, 2025, Bungie stated, and I quote, "We are actively working on additional neutral game Night Stalker changes that we intend to release in Shadow and Order, which could mean a variety of things such as a new or reworked aspect and hopefully a new offensive melee ability, because smoke bombs are simply not cutting it, literally." For Void Titans, in the This Week in Destiny blog post from August 28th, 2025, Bungie stated, and I quote, "Longer term, we'd like to make updates to Ward of Dawn and the Sentinel subclass, among other things." And that's all we've heard. Hopefully Bubble is restored to its former glory by being given back Weapons of Light in its 35% form, especially since Well of Radiance Warlocks can do the same thing with Boots of the Assembler now, or perhaps rework the super entirely. Fingers crossed we get some good changes. Arc Hunters have a relatively cryptic line again from the Renegades ability tuning preview, where Bungie state that, moving forward, we'll be looking for opportunities to diversify the number of Arc Strider builds that feel powerful powerful in endgame content, so perhaps some adjustments to aspects, we'll just have to wait and see. Circling back to the Pantheon Leaks document for a brief moment, it too mentioned the addition of a new Void Hunter dodge aspect that is similar to Mask of Bakris, again, grain of salt, and there's also no indication of when we might see this. Lastly, I wanted to highlight a change that's not coming during Shadow and Order, but is a question I've been receiving a lot lately and want to clear the air. Tier 5 exotic armor and any new systems that might be attached to exotic armor in general will not be coming out during the Year of Prophecy, because in the This Week in Destiny blog post from the 26th of June 2025, Bungie state that long term, we hope to eventually add support for exotics to access the benefits of higher tiers using a dedicated system that reflects their nature as a unique centerpiece in your builds. Although this system won't be ready for the Year of Prophecy, we wanted to make sure that exotic armor could benefit from armor archetypes and the reworked masterworking system. So that has been your summary on everything we know about the Shadow and Order major update, with the biggest changes being a potential vaulted raid Pantheon and some much needed sandbox and quality of life updates like for Void Hunter and weapon tier enhancement. I'm very much hoping that Shadow and Order is a better update than Ash and Iron, but to be honest, the bar is not terribly high. So feel free to let me know how you're feeling about Shadow and Order and what you're looking forward to the most about it down in the comments below. Anyway, that's all for today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.